Hope you're having a good start to your week as the springtime is almost upon us. Dustin Dopirak from the Bloomington Herald Times is with us. How are you, sir?
Doing well, Jim. How are you?
I cannot complain. I'll be glad when I am back in Bloomington. I am looking forward to getting over the time travel that I'm sure
Yes.
is going to be setting in. You've been all over the place, it sounds like,
Mm,
still covering different getting to cover different games, and
mm.
these games have just been phenomenal. As I mean, I expect them to be, but I'm not really. I don't know that I expected this great of parity, and the parity is just absolutely insane. I forget who it was the other day. It was a 4 and a 13 seed. That it was a 2 point. The spread was 2 points. I'm like, that's insane. And then we were just talking about St. Peter's, the Peacocks
Hmm.
that knock off Kentucky and then keep on rolling. I
Hmm.
mean, St. Peter's is playing in the Sweet 16. What? That is crazy.
Oh, it's wild. I mean, and obviously that the Kentucky game happened about the same time as the Indiana game. So when Indiana was getting boat raced, I didn't see very much of that. But then somebody kind of tapped me on the shoulder with like, I don't know, 5 minutes to go or 2 minutes to go when Indiana was down by 30, and they were like, "Hey, Kentucky's about to lose." I'm like, "What? Like, how did that?" Like I just put that at how is that even conceivable? I covered the Murray State St. Peter's game on Saturday night for like kind of our Gannett partners at the Courier Journal in Louisville. So I got to see those guys up close, and man, they are tough. They got a little bit of size. They're not. Murray State had a lot more sort of bulk and muscle to them, but St. Peter's has some length and guys that really, really defend. I mean, they like Sheen Holloway has those guys like, you know, amped up, I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, those guys get after you on defense. They got really good defensive numbers. If you look at their Ken Palm statistics, they're pretty fantastic. I think they're like one of the top 15 in the country as far as 2 points. 2 point field goal percentage. They defend the three pretty well. They defensive rebound pretty well. And they block a lot of shots. They got some guys get up. Casey and Defoe, the Rupert guy is really big, and then they got some shooters who really went off against Kentucky, and the Eatert kid hit a couple more against Murray State. So those guys are trouble. Now Purdue gets them. Purdue obviously you'd rather be playing them than Kentucky if you're Purdue. But all the same, that's not it's not going to be a cakewalk. I'll say that they should. I mean, Purdue should win that game. They should go to the Elite Eight, considering what they have. I mean, just not too many teams. I mean, St. Peter's can't handle 7-4 in Edie, and that's really always sort of the game changer for Purdue. The one thing they have that nobody else has, as good as Ivy is, and he's terrific. Edie is the thing that takes them. Edie and Williams together, having both of those options is the thing that takes them next level, and that's why there was just a massive foul disparity last night, is that Texas could not foul Edie. But all the same, St. Peter's is there, and they're going to be they are going to make sure Purdue know they played somebody in that game.
Well, if there's anyone that can move an immovable object, I will give it to a saint. And Saint. Ta-da-da. So, but yeah, when are we going to stop looking at teams with just big names and being shocked? I mean, every time, every year, and this tournament is the tournament, and every year it seems like we say, "Oh, this has been like no other," and maybe this has been, and I was kind of expecting the parity, but it's insane. Even the teams that did win, like last night, Arizona wins the 1-9 game, but that game goes to overtime. It's a battle. It was great. For the most part, every one of these games have been great. Indiana's one of the few anomalies, but
Yeah.
it's when are we going to stop looking at this? Well, that's a 4 and a 13. Well, that's easy. No, those days are done.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think this year is a little wilder. I mean, I want to say 2 years, like the 2020 tournament that never happened would have been nuts. Because I remember going into that year and thinking nobody's good, like just no, and it was like sort of every week somebody got upset, and you were like, man, literally no one's good in college basketball at all, and that tournament just never happens. And so we don't know how that would have shaken out, but I imagine that one would have been, COVID doesn't occur. The 2020 tournament is a madhouse. a total madhouse that year. But this one is sort of, but like you really look at what this was like, it was closer to it. I mean, like in between, last year you had some real powerhouses. I mean, Gonzaga and Baylor, you kind of had them pegged as a collision course for a while, and that's ended up what ended up happening, obviously, and Baylor ends up getting the win. And you had some crazy go on in there. Obviously, it was a bubble tournament. Like UCLA. I mean, we talked a lot this, after Indiana got pegged in the first four about UCLA going to the Final Four from the first four. They only had to drive an hour from West Lafayette to, from their play-in game back to Indy for the rest of it. But still, I mean, like there was a certain amount of parity. Obviously, there are some crazy things that obviously happened, but UCLA is still UCLA for them to come from the first four. But this group is weirder because I don't think you ever really felt like there was an overwhelming number one team. I mean, Gonzaga is your overall number one, but I mean, especially after seeing them up close in Portland this week. Last year's Gonzaga team, I think, beats this year's Gonzaga team handily. Without too much of a problem. And I mean, this Gonzaga team might win the title. And Holmgren is a difference maker. Obviously, there's something there that they have in Holmgren that they didn't have last year. I mean, the guard play is not close. I mean, Suggs and Ayayi, I think Nembrand is really good, but he's not off the charts good. Suggs was terrific, and Ayayi was terrific, and Kispert was such a good shooter. And it's just like there's so much more. There was so much more there. 1 to 4 that Gonzaga had, or really 1 to 3, but like Timmy and Holmgren is something else. But bottom line is they're vulnerable. Arizona, found ways last night, and they're really, really talented. And I love the Maturin kid. I mean, he makes a great shot, and Koloko was, darn near unguardable. But after that, there's only so much there. That's a very beatable team. Kansas is a very beatable team. Baylor's already gone down, which, surprised me for them to see them going to North Carolina. But, I mean, that Carolina team has got talent, and it's just taken it a while for it to get it right. But look at those players, man. I mean, RJ Davis, Caleb Love, those were guys in North Carolina that Indiana wanted desperately. And those are like their fourth best players after, Armando Bacot and Brady Manick. The bottom line is like there is a lot of parity. There's not one great team. I don't trust anybody to win this thing out of the group that's out there, but I think there's probably 9 teams that I can imagine doing it.
That are still alive.
Yeah.
How about Iowa State going from 2-24, whatever, 2-22, whatever they were, to the Sweet 16? That is mind-boggling, even in today's standard, with being able to rebuild a team out of the portal. That's pretty mind-boggling.
Oh no, it is, and obviously some of their guys obviously are out of the portal. Obviously, the Kalsher kid we saw, plenty of times playing for Minnesota. He did some big time shots for those guys. Did some big time defending over at Minnesota the last couple of years. So that helps obviously when you're able to go in the portal and get some guys, but still it's just a wild turn for them being at the bottom and to do it in the Big 12. I mean, I think we talk frequently about the Big 10 being a tough place to rebuild because nobody's fading. I mean, right now, like it obviously doesn't have the simple number of teams. But I like top to bottom again doesn't have the amount, it doesn't have the numbers that the Big 10 teams has a number of teams, but their top 6, their top half is I think the best in the country the last couple of years. I think the Big 12 has annually had 6 really, really good teams lately, where maybe the bottom 3 or 4 aren't great, so they don't get 8 or 9 in, but out of 10 they get 6, maybe 7, and those teams are really good. And you've got Kansas and Baylor that are at the top, and Texas Tech has been up there, so it's not an easy place to rebuild. You can catch a couple teams at the bottom there, but still you got to go up against Texas Tech, you got to go up against Texas and Oklahoma is no joke, and Oklahoma State's no joke, even though they're not in. Oklahoma State's got like great KenPom numbers, and they're 15-15. It's tough out in that league. It's tough to win. So to rebuild in that league enough to get a tournament, I don't even know if they were 500 in the league. But to win enough games, have that drastic of a turnaround is pretty amazing job over there.
I'm trying to think what the Big 12 has left in the tournament. Texas Tech and Kansas. I don't know if they have anyone else.
Yeah, they're missing. We're missing somebody obvious. And
Iowa State. mentioned him earlier.
Who you're
Duh.
literally talking about. Yeah.
We're just literally talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
So the Big 12 gets 3 teams in. The Big 10 gets 2. The ACC, a surprise, getting 3 teams into the Sweet 16. A
Yep.
team that only had 1 team ranked basically all season. North Carolina, though, they beat Duke more than once, I think. So
No, just
we
the
shouldn't
one.
be.
But
They are. They
I mean,
were.
they got dudes. So, like I said, I mean, they got
Yeah.
dudes. You know, it's more of a surprise that they were an 8. Again, like the ACC as a conference really did not help itself. And it's just in non-league play, it didn't do very well. You know, like Notre Dame's a play-in game. Indiana beats them. They were 15-5 in the league. Like you don't like ACC teams that go 15-5 in the league are usually 4 seeds. You know, I mean it's not even a discussion. I mean, like in most years, like if you go 15-5 in the ACC, like you're a title contender most seasons. So, and this season, like obviously it just does not have the rep. But I mean, North Carolina, I think they finished 23-8. I think something along those lines in the ACC. I mean, and again, you look at their guys, like there's a lot of top 30, top 40 talent on that team. That has just taken a while to gel. Just was kind of a mess last year. Took a while to get going this year. Had some bad early losses, but like again, like you look at those guys. I mean, we saw those guys play AAU ball. I mean, RJ Davis is a player. Indiana, and they wanted Caleb Love bad. Like Love was a guy that Archie Miller really, really wanted. And then on top of that, they got size and Leaky Black and Armando Bacon. And then they got the Manic kid from Oklahoma, and he can shoot the lights out. And obviously, he got flagrant fouled out of that. The Baylor game, but dude can play. And so it's just like, I mean, every time I watch him, I'm like, well, how are these guys bad? Like, how is it possible these guys are bad when they got this much talent? So like for them to step up finally in the tournament and beat somebody, I guess it's a surprise just because Baylor's been so solid, because they've been such a tough out, and obviously they're defending national champs and everything like that. And like, I just didn't see those guys getting beat, but Carolina has some juice. So I certainly wasn't surprised to see them win their first game. A little bit surprised to see them beat Baylor, but when you see them get going, you're like, well, how doesn't this team win all the time? Miami's a little bit of a surprise. Obviously, they got a ton of athleticism, and good for Charlie Moore, who's been here forever, still playing college basketball and getting into a Sweet 16. Good for that dude. But that's obviously a surprise because I really like that Auburn team, and I knew they were fading, but still, I mean, those guys got dudes between Smith and Kessler and Green. Like, I mean, I thought those guys had a chance of winning the whole thing. So for Miami to step in there when that game does something, but it does, kind of reconfigure our thoughts about conferences. I mean, like, again, the ACC was buried. Everybody was talking about how bad it was, and obviously it was a worse year than usual, but they could still cause you trouble. And all of a sudden people will be talking about how good the ACC is this week.